afternoon and welcome to Indie Business Radio. I'm your host, Donna Maria, and you have arrived at the one place where we empower you to enjoy your life, build your business, and have your way. Today's show is sponsored by our new apprentice program at the Indie Beauty Network. This is a great new affordable program for anybody who is starting a cosmetics business from scratch, looking for inexpensive, easy-to-follow directions and lots of mentoring at your disposal. Visit indiebeautynetwork.com and click on Join to get more information about that. Well, you know, we do not hear anything on the news these days if we're not hearing something about the financial markets. The economy in this country and other countries is all the rage and all the topics of conversation. And the things that have happened recently have really pointed out the importance of making sure that we manage our money, and this is especially true if you are a small business owner. That's why I'm so excited today to have as our guest Ramit Sethi. He is the author of I Will Teach You to Be Rich, a 6-week program for optimizing your money and becoming a financial grown-up. This book was just recently named as a New York Times bestseller, and that's fantastic. And the author, Ramit Sethi, is the founder and writer of IWillTeachYouToBeRich.com. He's also the co-founder of PB Wiki, an online collaboration company, and he is a recent graduate of Stanford and lives in San Francisco, and he's joining us from a remote office today in Salt Lake City, Utah. Welcome to the show, Ramit.
Thank you for having me.
Well, tell me this. Okay, now, there's lots and lots of books out there on the market about how to manage your money. Tell me why another one.
Well, most books on personal finance are all about no, no, no. No, you can't buy that latte. No, you can't go on vacation. No, you can't buy those jeans. And the fact of the matter is they mostly don't work because we do buy all those things, and then we kind of just shut down because it's someone else telling us, no, you can't do it. My book, which I've been working on for a couple of years, and I've been writing the blog for 5 years since I was at Stanford, is about saying yes. Yes, you should spend extravagantly on the things you love if you cut costs mercilessly on the things that you don't.
So this is all about giving yourself permission to splurge as long as you're disciplined on the back end.
Absolutely, and it includes a lot of sort of new psychology and insights of money. For example, how to negotiate like an Indian. That's one of the things I talk about in the book, which is, a lot of times you'll get these tips that say, spend less than you make, and call up your cable company and try to get your rates down, but they don't actually show you how to do it. So what I did was in my book, I went hyper-tactical, and I included literally call scripts that you use to read off when you negotiate with your credit card, your bank, your cable company, or your car insurance company, so you know exactly what to say to get hundreds of dollars in savings just in a few minutes.
And Ramit, one thing that your book talks about is, I guess, the psychological impact of calling financial planning something like a budget. You have a different terminology for that. Tell us about that.
Well, I hate budgets because they never work. I mean, when you think about it, think of budgets and think of dieting in the same way. We feel guilty that we didn't keep our budget. We feel guilty that we overate, right? And we go onto these fad diets or these fad budgets that last about 2 weeks, and then we just go back to the way we were. They don't work. In fact, over 90% of diets fail, and budgets certainly don't work either. So if something isn't working for the last 50 years, we can't just keep on continuing to tell people to do it. It just doesn't make sense. So instead of a budget which is backwards looking, what I came up with was a conscious spending plan, and this is forward-looking. What you do is say, look, realistically, where do I want to spend my money? Do I really love buying that Starbucks every morning? Fine. I'm not going to feel guilty about it. I'm going to put that down, and I'm going to then decide where there are things that I don't care about. So I have a friend, his name is Jim, for example, and he buys mountain bikes, right? He does mountain biking, and it's a pretty expensive sport, but he spends a lot of money on that, but he also cuts his costs mercilessly on, for example, where he lives. So that's what I would define as rich, someone who spends consciously on the things they love.
Now, your book also talks about a lot at the very beginning about optimizing your credit. And one of the things it says is that if you have good credit, you should get more credit. And my question about that is that something that everybody can handle, or how should we approach that based on our particular lifestyles, considering that credit card companies are doing very strange things these days?
Yeah, they really are. Okay, so the thing about credit is that it's not sexy, but it's one of the things that will help you get rich. We love to focus on going out to eat and saving money on that $2 Coke. In the grand scheme of things, that really doesn't have that big of a material impact on your money. What does is big wins, like credit. So let me first give you an example of the difference between someone who has good credit and bad credit. Mm-hmm. If you're going to buy a typical house, 30-year mortgage, $200,000 loan, the difference between someone who has great credit and poor credit is over $6,000 a year. So if you're trying to decide, should I worry about lattes or buying generic crackers, or should I focus on my credit, the answer is focus on your credit. It's one of the 4 or 5 biggest things in your financial life. When it comes to credit, the first thing is to be sensible about it. Make sure that you're paying off your bills on time. That's 35% of your credit score right there. And that's why I talk about how to automate your money, and we can get to that later. But once you have gotten a great score, and if you're at that last 10% where you're trying to optimize, then you certainly can look at getting more credit or kind of tweaking your credit using some advanced strategies I talk about. The first thing is just make sure you're paying your bills on time, and if you have debt, create a plan to pay it off. And I show you how to do that in Chapter 1.
Right. And one other thing in Chapter 1 is sort of this script of how to deal with a credit card company that's either trying to charge you a fee, whether it's justified or not, or trying to increase your rate somehow. And you have a script that kind of walks us through that. And, here's my question. So much of what the credit card companies are doing right now is written in teeny tiny little print. And so for consumers and small business owners who need to have credit, especially if you're a business owner, you don't really need it, but it certainly does help to grow your business sooner or faster. What are some of the things? I mean, can we get any leverage by using the scripts that you talk about in your book?
Absolutely. I mean, my readers, they easily, many of them save $100 or $200 using just the scripts in Chapter 1, and that's for a one-time call. So let me give you a few examples of what you can do with credit cards that you may not have known. Mm-hmm. First of all, if you get a late fee, you can get that waived instantly. That's not a problem. Why? Because these credit card companies pay hundreds of dollars to acquire you as a customer. They don't want to lose you for a small $20 fee. Okay. Second, you can actually get your APR reduced in some cases. That can save you hundreds or thousands of dollars. I have a number of readers who have done that. And the third thing that a lot of people don't know is that your credit card gives you huge benefits when you buy things. So they'll give you up to a 1-year extended warranty automatically, so you don't need to buy those extended warranties. If you spill water on your laptop in the first 90 days, they'll reimburse you $500 or $1,000, or even if you lose your laptop. Mm-hmm. So there are many different things that they do that people don't know, and I talk about how to call up your credit card company and ask them for their booklet of benefits, and you'll get a nice booklet that shows you exactly the complimentary things you get with your credit card.
So is it true that they don't make this stuff readily available to most people?
Well, they do put it in about, size 8 font in a 45-page document. And unfortunately or fortunately, I am a huge weirdo, so I read all this stuff. And then I could have distilled it down in the book for what the benefits are that you get.
Good. Very good tips on that. And, it is extremely interesting to see how far you can get with a credit card company just by asking them questions.
These companies really want to help you. As much as I love to hate credit card companies, and I do, and we all do, but there are actually tons of benefits that people just don't use. And if you did, you could save like over $1,000 a year for many people. Mm-hmm. You're talking about insurance, travel insurance, purchase protection. There are a number of things that people have never heard of. If they actually called them up and said, hey, what benefits do I get? You will be surprised at what they offer you.
Ramit, let's talk about being a financial grown-up when it comes to our businesses. Now, these days, more people need to have a business pretty much than ever before, which means that more people are put in a position of having to manage money for a business before they really feel like they're prepared to. So let's talk about using a credit card specifically for business. I talk with a lot of small business owners who feel constrained to use just cash, and I have to admit I'm pretty much one of those. Give us some tips on how we can use a credit card to expand our businesses without, just getting in over your heads, because we want to be financial grown-ups about this, like you say. So give us some tips on how to do that. You're a small business owner, and so you have to deal with these financial issues as well. How do you handle the question of whether, when you have something to buy, okay, do I wait a few months and save up for it, or do I go ahead and use a credit card and figure out how to pay it off later?
Well, I think obviously the goal should be to pay off your credit card every month, and for that you need cash flow. We don't need to get into the cash flow side of it too much, because I know you talk about that in other cases. But for the financial side, first thing to do is just get a separate business card, okay, because it makes your life so much simpler to not have to sort it out. It's all on one card. 2, I would recommend using a service, obviously, like QuickBooks, even Mint for your business account that can show you where you're actually spending money. The third thing is that don't be afraid to use a credit card assuming you've got the cash flow, because remember, these credit cards give you protection that cash cannot. So anytime you're buying something, particularly large purchases, I like to use a credit card knowing that I can pay it off in full, because if I buy, for example, a TV and it breaks, I've got that consumer protection from my credit card. Okay?
The key is having cash flow.
It is an issue of having cash flow, absolutely. And I think for big things, one of the things I talk about is, if you really want to buy something that's, let's say it's $2,000, and you don't have the money, then that's a great case where you definitely want to save up, okay? And this is the case for most people. If you want to buy a $2,000 whatever, save up for that. It could take you 3 months, it could take you 12 months. But start putting away money in a savings account, or I like to use sub-savings accounts. So one of the things I do is I have a large savings account, right? It's just my broad savings account. And then I've got sub-savings accounts like saving for a trip to China, saving for, one of them is actually called Stupid Mistakes. I put money in there each month. It's about $50 a month, because if I get a parking ticket or some kind of fee that I can't negotiate out of, I use that to pay it off. What that does is it lets me save up for sub-savings targeted goals. And this really helps you as a business owner figure out what is it that you're saving for in the midterm and long term.
And Ramit, you talk about the importance and the benefits that we can obtain by synchronizing all of our different accounts in your book. Do you mean personal and business accounts, or should they be synchronized separately?
It really depends on how you want to do it. I synchronize them separately, but this is a key cornerstone of personal finance that so many other books overlook. What they basically say is like, make sure you pay your bills on time, which that's great advice, but it's so high level as to be meaningless. What I did in my book was say, all right, on this date, you should transfer this much money from this account to that account. Okay, so it's all automated. And here's the problem that this is solving. We wake up every day and there's 50 financial choices we can make. Pay off our debt, earn more money, go out to dinner, and inevitably we just shut down and say, whatever, I'm just going to do whatever I've been doing, and I'll figure out the big picture later. Well, what we need to do is basically automate it so that when we wake up every morning, we know that our money has been handled, that the next $100 we earn is being routed automatically, part of it to our 401k if we have one, or a Roth IRA or a SEP IRA, to a savings account, maybe even a sub-savings account. And by the time that money gets down to us, it's guilt-free spending that we can use for things we love and we need.
Ramit, tell me a little bit about your blog and what types of questions and comments you see that people struggle with there. I know that you've been blogging for quite some time, long before this book, was sort of a twinkle in your eye. Tell us, what are the top 3 issues, questions, comments that you see that come through from people who are struggling with financial issues, and in particular, if any, people who are either starting a business or already have a small business?
Yeah. I have been writing it for about 5 years, like I said, since I was a student at Stanford. I don't think it's as much people struggling with financial issues. I really don't like to think about it like that. I think people are, if they come to a blog on personal finance, they're engaging, and they actually want to get ahead. There's a lot of other blogs that focus on frugality and helping people get out of debt, and that is, that's great. They serve a very valuable purpose. But for my blog, it's people who are not looking backward as much as looking forward and saying, hey, I want to get ahead. So some of the things that I see on my blog are certainly entrepreneurship. How do you earn more money? And I talk about that quite extensively. How do you take your money and automate it? Because a lot of the people that read my site, they don't want to be personal finance experts. They just want their money to get handled so they can go on and live their life. And so those are some of the things. I will tell you something interesting in terms of a gender breakdown. What I find after doing pretty extensive studies of my own users, men tend to be interested in entrepreneurship and investing. Women tend to be more interested in saving. That falls very much similar along lines that you find in the literature. And I think this is sort of similar to the psychology findings, which are men tend to be overconfident about their abilities, women tend to be underconfident about their abilities, and this is pretty well reflected in the types of interest that they have when it comes to money.
And you say that if we put some of the tips to work in your book and the ones you share at your blog, then we don't really have to worry that much about having a financial advisor, a professional financial advisor.
Yeah. And first of all, let me say I think it's interesting that you're using words like concerned and worry, because those are words that my readers and I don't use. We don't want to be concerned or worry about money. Money is actually a very positive thing.
Let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about that for a second, because it kind of goes back to what you just said. You just mentioned that the men in your audience tend to be more concerned about entrepreneurship, and the women tend to be more concerned about savings. You know what interests me about that is that the statistics I'm reading about small business ownership in this country indicate that women are starting businesses at pretty much twice the speed of the national average, which kind of means twice as fast as everyone else. So it's interesting to me that what that perhaps means is, statistics are statistics, but it's interesting to me that what that may mean is that women, while they may have typically been more concerned about saving, are now also they have a double concern because there's entrepreneurship that's coming into play as well for a variety of reasons. Their spouses are getting laid off, or, they'd rather work from home than have a traditional job when they have kids, but they have to start a business to do that because they can't find a job they can work from home. So, can you comment on whether you've noticed any of that? And I don't mean to use the word struggle or kind of make it seem negative, but as a woman with small children who is concerned about saving and concerned about my business, I have to say that, struggle probably is a bad word, but concern, I think, I'm trying to do both. So help us out here. What are you seeing with women who are in this position, or what suggestions do you have for us that may be different from the norm?
Well, the first is that I would say that I've certainly seen more women interested in my site. My site tends to be focused, on investing in entrepreneurship. I've actually seen quite a few women come in. My numbers used to be about 77% men, and now it's down to somewhere in the 60s, which is great. It means that there are actually more women in the audience, and that's superb. In terms of what are some of the unusual, tips and tactics that I suggest, one of the first is that starting a business does not have to be the most complicated thing in the world. It doesn't mean you have to get a huge license. It doesn't mean you have to train and get some kind of certification. One of the simplest ways to start earning money is to become a consultant. So let's talk about that for a second. Let's
do that, and we're going to have to take a break first. I'm sorry, I asked a huge question before my engineer's saying, break. So we'll take a break. We're going to come back and talk with Ramit about that. I love this topic, how you can take whatever you know and turn it into a consulting business. This is Indie Business Radio. We'll be right back.
Why is everyone listening to GlobalTalkRadio.com? Because it's the future of talk radio. Every day, more and more people are finding Internet radio as not just an alternative media, but as a replacement to traditional AM and FM broadcast stations. Internet radio offers a wider variety of programs, convenient on-demand listening that meets your schedule, and fewer commercial interruptions. And GlobalTalkRadio.com is already leading the way by matching this content with a highly targeted Internet audience. GlobalTalkRadio.com offers its listeners one of the widest programming varieties on the Internet, from business and finance to self-improvement, paranormal, health, literature, romance, politics, and more. There are also opportunities for prospective hosts who would like to host their own weekly or one-time talk shows. Want to learn more? Check us out at www.globaltalkradio.com and see the future of talk radio today.
Welcome back to Indie Business Radio. I'm Donna Maria, and we're talking this afternoon with author Ramit Sethi. He wrote, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, a 6-week program for optimizing your money and becoming a financial grown-up. And before we took our break, Ramit shared with us one of the things that he is encouraging many of his blog readers and book readers and people that come to hear him speak, encouraging them to do is to think about starting a consulting business. Is that news to anyone, Ramit?
It is, because consulting has typically been thought of as something you have to get a license for and, set up all this stuff, and it's really not the case. When you become a consultant, my friends kind of roll their eyes when I tell them this, and I say, wait a minute, what are you good at? And they say, I don't know, I'm just a project manager. Really? Can you speak English? Can you draw? Can you do 4th grade math? If you can do those things, there may be somebody on Craigslist who will hire you for $15 to $25 an hour to tutor their child, or even to learn from you about, how to sew. These are all ways you can start a simple consulting stream of revenue, and it's not hard.
Wow. Okay, so, that's a mindset change for a lot of people who would say, yeah, I know how to sew, but they've never thought of it as something that could actually do anything for them other than make clothes for their family.
Absolutely. There is somebody out there, if you have a skill, who probably would be willing to learn and pay for it. If, number one, you're good at what you do, and number two, you position it in the right way. So, if someone says, I'm good at communication, well, that's not a marketable skill. Just good at communication on its own, what does that mean? Are you good at writing? Are you good at speaking? Are you a public speaking trainer? You have to narrow it down and position it correctly. But you have to find the blend between what you're good at and what the market wants. And then realize that there are people out there who will pay, especially now online. You can do things like Craigslist. You can even do it remotely, using Ustream or any of these sites. And people will certainly pay.
Right. Now, you have what you call a CEO model. Tell us about that.
Most people think about saving, and they roll their eyes and kind of say, forget it, because they think saving means only cutting down on the things that they love spending on. And as I always say, you can't out-frugal your way to being rich. You can only cut so far. So what I came up with was a CEO model, which is, this is how I define savings. Cutting costs, we're all familiar with that. Earning more, most people forget about earning more. So there's that. And then the third part is optimizing your spending. And so, if you like, we can talk about each of those in turn. And what I did was, in November of last year, I did a Save $1,000 in 30 Days challenge, where I challenged people, and thousands of people took part in this, to save $1,000 in 30 days. And people were really, really quite successful using my tips.
Really? Okay, so let's talk about each one of them, cutting costs.
So cutting costs, one of the things I talk about is, instead of focusing on the 50 things you could save 5% on, and you'll end up feeling guilty about them, focus on the biggest two. The biggest two discretionary expenses for me are eating out and going out. I'm 26. That's what I do. So what I said was, let's just pretend. I'm just going to make up a number. Let's pretend I was spending $1,000 a month on both of those together. Instead of saying, I'm going to cut it down to 100, because that's not sustainable, I said, you know what, over the next 6 months, I'm going to cut it down by 25%. So, next month I might spend 980, then 950, etc. By the end of those 6 months or 3 months or whatever I decide, I have an extra $250 of cash flow each month that I can use for my business, for investing, or even for spending on something that I love. So focus on the biggest two and cut relentlessly on those. And I have tips on what's, mint.com and all these other things that you should use to do it. But the mindset is focus on the big wins, not the little wins.
So it's kind of like, don't sweat the small stuff. If you can save a little bit of money on 15 areas, you might as well just go ahead and make it easier for yourself, save the same amount on 2, and then you can expand from there.
That's absolutely right, because psychology is a large part of it. You have to remember, we are cognitive misers, meaning we only have enough attention for certain things. And so if you try to save on 100 things, it's called the paradox of choice. You have too many things, you're inevitably not going to do anything. Pick 2, constrain your own choices, and you will be able to save far more effectively.
I like that. Okay, great. So now the second one is earn more money. How about that one?
Yep. So we talked about consulting. That's one. In my book, in Chapter 9, I actually have a script for negotiating a raise. Now, that's a little tough in this environment, so I would think hard about whether that makes sense or not. But the general point is that so many times people focus on generating passive revenue when they have not even optimized their own active revenue, right? They haven't fully gotten what they should be earning at their own jobs, or they may be working in a job that they're comfortable at and they're being paid under market, or they could work harder and tell their boss, look, I know times are tough right now, but 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, I want to be earning more. What can I do to be really valuable to this business?
I like what you said. You said, I like a lot of things you're saying, but the one I'm focused on right now is you can't generate passive income until you optimize your active income. Talk a little bit more about that, because passive revenue is all the rage these days. We see it everywhere. How to earn money in your bunny slippers, which I think is sort of an interesting mindset that's out there. But what you're saying is that until you get to a particular point, then your passive income is always going to sort of be in front of you, because you've got to make the most of the active things you have to do, the more labor-intensive things first.
Yeah, if you cannot fully squeeze out every bit of value from your active job, what makes you think that you'll be great at generating passive revenue? Passive revenue is one of the areas where literally most people fail. It's this sexy kind of destination that people say, I want to generate passive revenue. not realizing that the people who actually generate passive revenue actually work really, really, really hard.
Right.
And it takes years to get there. So instead of focusing on some distant goal that's very unlikely you'll actually succeed, focus on the thing you have in front of you first. That is, get a raise. Be more valuable to your company. Do more valuable work so that you will be rewarded. If you can do that, then you will start seeing a lot more ways of generating passive revenue.
Do you find a lot more people at your blog are sort of, in a job position where they're starting to consult on the side?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is a brand new thing. A lot of people are very interested in how to do freelancing on the side. And let me give you one of my best tips that I've found, which is work for free when it comes to freelancing. So let me give you an example right from my life. This is one of the best strategies I've used to dramatically increase the rates that I charge for freelancing. All right. So I went when I was younger, and I still do this sometimes, and I would find people that I trust and that I think are visionaries, okay? People that I would read about in the magazines that I read or the blogs or whatever, and I would say, look, Mr. Big-time blogger, I know that you don't know how to edit video, and you're looking for someone to help edit video. Let me do that for free. All right? I know how to do that. Give me a chance for 6 weeks or 12 weeks. Ultimately, I do want to be making money, but right now I'd be willing to do it for free if you give me advice, and if you think I'm great, you'd make some introductions to your friends, okay? Mm-hmm. People do this for me all the time, and I will tell you a great story that just happened recently. One guy does my engineering for my blog. He's been working for me for free for months, okay? Just putting in the time, and I give him some mentorship and introductions. Well, the other day I was in a green room at CNBC, and I met somebody who asked me about this web stuff, and she said, can you recommend somebody? I said, as a matter of fact, I can. 2 weeks later, the guy had a $40,000 contract.
Wow.
Okay? Because he had been doing free work for me, and he was excellent. And I was happy to make that introduction. And now I pay him as well.
Good. Well, that sounds like a definite win-win for everyone. So we've got our CEO model. We've got cutting costs, earning more money, and the third one is optimizing your spending. Tell us what you mean by that.
This is a great one. A lot of people say there's no way I can save any more. I've squeezed everything out of my budget. And to be quite blunt, I don't believe you, okay? Because there's always so much more that you can squeeze out. Let me give you a couple examples. The first is a negotiation script I did for car insurance. So people who have car insurance, one thing they forget is that they sign up once and they never go back and re-optimize it. So for me, every 12 months I have a reminder in my calendar that says, call up these companies and negotiate them down. Car insurance is one of them. Now for me, what I put on my website, if you just search for negotiating car insurance, I will teach you to be rich, I put a script of what to say. I put their phone numbers and their websites, okay, all the big ones. Mm-hmm. I found the difference between the most expensive and least expensive to be $700 per year.
Yeah.
Just for that one call on a Saturday afternoon. Mm-hmm. So that's one tip. Call up all your subscriptions and tell them, and this is the key phrase to use, times are tough. Look, $80 cable bill a month, times are tough. I just can't afford that. What can you do? Because I would hate to switch off of Comcast, okay? Right. You will get amazing discounts. Right there, some people, Comcast will often cut it by $30 a month. That's almost $400 a year savings. $400 you can use for your business or, again, travel or whatever you want. So those are some ways you can optimize, and there are a whole bunch more in my Save $1,000 in 30 Days challenge and the book.
Oh, and so tell me when the 30-day challenge starts or ends. Is there another one coming up?
You can actually read all of the tips online. Just search Google for Save $1,000 in 30 Days challenge, and there are 30 tips in 30 days, so you can work through each of them. Each of them is designed to take you one day, and you will save hundreds, if not over $1,000.
Right, so this is an ongoing thing. It's not a contest that ended.
Absolutely. It's still ongoing. You can use the tips yourself.
Excellent. So earlier you said you can't out-frugal your way to being rich. What do you mean by that?
So many times people focus on just cutting costs. Mm-hmm. And frankly, as American consumers, cutting costs is, we're not really good at it. Actually, we're horrible at it, okay? Because all of our friends spend more and more, whether they have it or not. The media tells us to spend more. Our parents probably were not very frugal. So we are not equipped to cut costs very well. And the worst thing is, we cut costs on things that are meaningless, like spending money on lattes. That's great. We feel guilty about it. We stop spending for 2 weeks, and then we go right back to it, okay? It doesn't work. It hasn't worked. So what I would suggest in frugality is the CEO model. Cut costs on the things that you don't care about, and cut costs mercilessly on those big things, okay? But if it's like a $2 latte or $3 latte, My most successful I Will Teach You to Be Rich readers, this is what they tell me. They say, you know what, when I go out with friends, I don't care about spending on little things because I know that I've got the big wins handled in my life. So what I want to do, and what I do with automation, we can talk about that, is make sure your money is going to the right places so that by the time it gets to you, it is guilt-free. You can spend it on whatever you want.
That's a good point. We are going to come back and talk for one more segment and get some more great tips from Ramit Sethi, author of I Will Teach You to Be Rich. This is Indie Business Radio. We'll be right back.
Want to stay on top of what's new in the radio industry? Sign up for a free subscription to the Future of Talk Radio, available exclusively to listeners of globaltalkradio.com, and find out what's new in the world of online radio. Listeners can find out about new shows and special guests. People with something special to offer can find out how to become a guest and how to prepare for an interview. And prospective hosts will find a valuable resource for everything from planning the new program to selecting topics and guests, recouping expenses by selling advertising, and more. Sign up today for your free subscription to the Future of Talk Radio by visiting www.globaltalkradio.com and learn about the future of talk radio today.
Welcome back to Indie Business Radio. We're here with Ramit Sethi, author of I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And Ramit has been sharing some fantastic tips for us when it comes to maximizing our income and then taking really good care of that money when we get it and making it work for us in the future. And one of the things we've been talking about, Ramit, is the fact that you are seeing, as so many others of us are, a marked increase in the number of people who are starting businesses. They may be on the side, quote unquote, because they have a full-time job, but more people are also looking to actually take a side business full-time. Can you give us some tips on how we can manage our money when we know that we're going to go from this full-time gig where we know exactly how much money we're going to have every 2 weeks to something where it's very irregular in terms of the income and the expenses that we have?
Let me answer that in two parts. The first part is it's easiest to set up your personal accounts first and fully automate those. Then you can set up your business accounts. Don't jump ahead. It's really easy and important to do your personal accounts. And let's talk about that maybe in a second. In terms of the second question, which is how does someone with an irregular income and irregular expenses, how do they manage their cash flow and money? And let me give you a really simple way of doing this, okay? What you need to do is first figure out what's the minimum you need to live on every month. And I'm just going to make up a number here. Let's say it's $5,000 a month. Okay, I'm just making up a number. If you need $5,000 a month and you're an irregular income freelancer, some months you might make $10,000. Some months you might make $200. So how do you do that? What I do is I say, you know what, eventually I want to work to getting 6 months of emergency money set up. All right? So 6 times 5,000, that's $30,000. That's how much I want to have sitting in the bank. Now, you don't need to get that today. You can work to that for the next 2 or 3 years. But each time you earn more than $5,000, put that money in your savings account, okay? Whenever you earn less, you can dip into that savings account and pull it out. The eventual goal is that you have $30,000 or 6 months of savings, and anytime you earn more, you can, once you've maxed it out, you can start investing and you can start doing whatever else. If you ever have less or you have a dry spell for a few months, you can pull money out of that emergency fund. So that is the goal as an irregular income and expenses freelancer.
So essentially what you're saying is that you create sort of a backup fund, an emergency fund, for lack of a better word.
That's exactly right. And we all know that. But when people say create an emergency fund, they're kind of like, all right, well, what does that mean? How do I actually do that? So, again, the I Will Teach You to Be Rich way is being really, really specific. And I think in chapter 4 or 5 of my book, I show you exactly how to set up that fund, and so that each time you earn money, you have money automatically redirected to that emergency fund.
No, Ramit, we haven't even gotten to the people, me included, who are working on not just running a business, not just, making sure we have the funds that we need day to day, but we also have kids, and we want to save for the future for them. Is this a whole other savings plan we have to think about?
It is, but one of the biggest mistakes people make is saving for their kids instead of saving for themselves.
Okay?
So, and this is sort of counterintuitive because we're brought up to say, oh, my God, better save for the kids. Who knows about college? It's going to be $1 billion by then. Well, guess what? Kids can get scholarships, or kids can even get loans, but you cannot get a replacement retirement fund, okay? Mm-hmm. And considering that by the time you have kids, you know, you're probably in your 20s, 30s, time has already gone by for your compound interest gains when it comes to investing. So first thing you should be doing is maxing out your own investment retirement accounts. If you have so much money left over that you've maxed everything out, okay, and then you decide that you want to put some money aside, great, do it. But, what my parents told me, we have 4 kids, very middle-class family. They said, look, you want to go to college? You got to get scholarships. And so we did, right? Collectively, we earned hundreds of thousands of dollars of scholarships. There are ways, and I talk about that on my site as well, how to get scholarships. But first, just remember, you've got to get your retirement account set up before you start saving for your children. It's
and
really
there
important.
are simple ways to do that, right? I mean, your book talks about it doesn't have to be this great big huge ton of money, professional financial person portfolio kind of thing. That if you're a small business owner, right, you can set up your own simple plan and then grow from there and expand as your business grows.
Oh my God, that is exactly right. In fact, investing is not for rich people. That is the title of chapter 7. People think often that you have to have $1 million to start investing, or you have to get some financial advisor. No, you don't. Investing is quite simple. And by the way, let me say this really emphatically. Listen up closely. Investing is not about picking stocks. People think that you have to be able to understand PE ratios and read a prospectus. That is not the case at all. The simplest way to invest is to pick a life cycle fund. And all this is, it's also called the target date retirement fund. You pick how old you're going to be when you retire, and that's it. It's one fund. It automatically rebalances for you. All you have to focus on is sending $50, $100, $1,000 a month, whatever you can send, and it will grow for you over the long term. That's it.
It's interesting that you say that because I remember the very first time, this was many, many years ago, I picked up the phone at a friend's recommendation and called her financial advisor. I can't remember which big brokerage house they were, may not even be in business anymore. But I called him and I said, okay, my girlfriend told me you're doing this, and for her or with her, and I want to get in on the action. And his first question was whether or not I had $75,000 at my disposal.
You know why? And that makes me so angry. That makes me so angry because these guys, not all financial advisors, but a lot of them, make money off commissions, meaning you put $100 in and they're taking a good percentage of that for doing virtually nothing. In fact, even portfolio experts in New York who are paid millions of dollars, 70% of the time they fail to beat the market. You, the individual investor, can actually get better returns than them over the long term. The problem is that we tend to think, investing is about picking stocks, or I better outsource this to somebody who knows better, just like I outsource my gardening to a gardener. Not the case. If you do this right, if you spend 3 hours reading a book, read mine or read another book, Susie Orman is great as well, you will learn how to do this and you will save tens of thousands of dollars over your lifetime.
So in a nutshell, a lot of this is about being willing to reprogram your brain against the grain almost.
Exactly, against what Wall Street has told us, that you have to be trading and picking sexy stocks, which is complete nonsense, against your friends who always complain about President Obama or policy, and those people, I always am just tempted to say, really? You're complaining about macroeconomic policy? Have you, focused on your 401k? Have you maxed out your IRA? Have you set up an automated savings plan? No. Chances are they haven't, but they would rather just complain. So you have to focus on yourself rather than worrying about what's going on in the macro economy. That has very little to do with your own money.
And one of the things that your book has in a couple of places, and I'm looking particular at Chapter 4, is you not only do you suggest that people do certain things, but you kind of give them an idea of how much time it should take. Have you found that encourages more people to take some of the steps than not, because you kind of you give them a context for when they can actually sit down and do it, and you can kind of compare the time invested to the benefit you're going to get out of it?
Yeah, look, the book is a 6-week plan, right? So in 6 weeks, what you have is all your accounts are set up. They're all automated. You've started investing, even if it's just $50 a month, and you know what to do going forward. The point of this book was not for me to write, all these fancy words that I know. The point is behavioral change. So if you read this book and you don't do something different, then I have failed. And I will tell you that I have thousands and thousands of people who have read the book, read my site, and I get emails all the time. I used to be $17,000 in debt a year and a half ago. Now I have $5,000 in the bank. Or helped my parents set up an IRA. Or now I have $15,000 away and I can go on vacation to Vegas every month. That is the kind of email that I love to get.
That's amazing. It just shows the power of the individual, which so many people are really not used to hearing and exercising, because we're so used to, when it comes to finances, somebody else not just telling us what to do, but doing it for us.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's not like hiring a gardener or somebody to clean your house. It's quite different because you end up spending tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. Let me put it this way, just one last point. For all the time you spend watching TV or, eating out, whatever it may be, I'm not judging those things at all. But I Will Teach You Rich, I don't judge your spending. If you love it, then you should spend on it. But wouldn't it be worth it to spend 3, 4, 5 hours setting your money up so it runs on autopilot so that you can focus on the important things in life? That is the point of I Will Teach You to Be Rich.
You talk about automating your accounts. But let me ask you a practical question about that. Have you noticed that when you set up the automated payments, and I've done this for some of my accounts, but not all of them, because one of the challenges is that banks don't typically deal with that money on the same kind of time cycle on a consistent basis. In other words, I've seen, myself in a situation where the money comes out way after I think it will because of some explanation the bank gives me. Is there some kind of, I know we could call them after the fact, and if there's a bounce check fee or something like that wasn't intended because of something like this, but do you find that when people set that kind of payment plan up, they really have to kind of nail down the period of time between when that automated payment is made and when it actually hits the account?
Most other people will say, automate your accounts, which, as you've pointed out on a practical level, doesn't work because there are little tiny issues that prevent us from actually doing it. In my book, I actually have a chart that shows you on the first of the month, you should transfer from this account to that account. On the third of the month, you should set up an automatic transfer from here to here. So that I've made sure, I've thought it through in terms of how much time you need to send money from one account to the other. You don't want to have to do any of this stuff one-off. Remember that this stuff is automated so that you get an email saying this is what's about to happen. It's all under your control. If you want to change something, you can. So it's not like this is all out of your control. But by default, if you do nothing, the right things will happen. Your money will go from your paycheck to your savings account and your investment account, etc. I've set it up for you so that the timing works out perfectly well.
Ramit, do you find that some people, even before they even open your book, they come to you and they say, I've never been good with money. No matter what you tell me, I can't possibly get better?
Those people usually don't pick up a personal finance book. And 10 years down the line, they realize, wow, I should be doing something with my money. I guess I should read something, and then they often realize that it's too late, right? It's never too late to get started, but it is certainly too late to catch up on the majority of gains you could have had if you had started earlier in life. So the people that come to me, by the time they pick up an I Will Teach You to Be Rich book or go to my blog, they have already qualified themselves to say, hey, I'm interested in this stuff. I'm willing to spend $10 on a book or spend some time reading a blog that's free. Say, I actually want to get this thing handled. And I find that there are the A's, the B's, and the C's. The A's are already reading my blog, and they're reading other blogs. The B's are the great masses. It's possible to persuade them if you can really resonate your message with them. And the C's, it's kind of hopeless. Maybe somebody else can help them. I know I'm not that person. It's prohibitively hard. So I really focus on the A's and the B's to really get people to manage their money and then, most importantly, tell their friends about it as well.
Got it. So the B's are the masses. What are the A's again, Ramit?
They're the people that are already reading my blog, other personal finance blogs, and maybe even some personal finance books. Probably listening to this radio show as well. They really want self-improvement. They want to optimize their lives.
Well, and that's a really interesting progression there, too, because it almost seems like it applies to any person, any customer of a potential business. You either have people you can't influence at all, people you are influencing, or the masses, which are the people that you can influence.
I think it's really important. You don't want to try to get everybody. With my blog, people often say, you don't talk about debt too much. Well, you're right. There are other blogs that do a better job talking about debt. I want to talk about entrepreneurship. I want to talk about people who have good jobs and they want to get even further along rather than looking backwards.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So let me ask you this about how you're running things. I mean, you're a young guy. I see all the fantastic things that you're doing. When you were in college, when you started your blog, did you see yourself as having authored a book like this and really being able to tackle these issues in ways that most people can understand?
I never really looked that far ahead. I think it's difficult to plan 5 years down the road. What I knew was that I had something I felt I needed to tell people, and I just had this gut feeling that this is good stuff. Maybe it sounds cocky. I think I was cocky, and I probably still am. I wrote the Wall Street Journal and said, look, you guys need somebody to write a column for young people, and I'll do it. I'll do it for free. You really need to have me on board. And they ignored me and ignored me and ignored me, and I kept on just, constantly being polite but pinging them, and eventually they wrote about me. So I think that when it comes to money, what I wanted to do was always have it be like you and I are sitting across a coffee table, chit-chatting, and making, just being real instead of some guy from on high condescending and saying, don't spend money on those clothes. That's never the way that I wanted to deal with money. And I think, fortunately, that has been successful with the people who read my site.
So, Sethi, help us out a little bit for the small business owners who may be listening who have run into some credit card trouble. And, they're not at the point of bankruptcy, but, the handwriting could possibly be on the wall if they don't reverse things. What are some of the top things they should do to try and see if they can, turn their businesses around?
I think there's two things. The first thing I find with people who are in credit card debt, and this is very common, is that they have never sat down and actually written down how much they owe, at what interest rate, and how long it will take to pay it off. This is a big deal because it forces people to actually acknowledge how much debt they have. Now, remember, you don't have to do the work yourself. In the book, I show you exactly how to call up your credit cards and get them to tell you all these numbers. And I show you a simple spreadsheet on exactly what to do.
Right.
That is critical because the key part is creating a plan. If you have debt, that's not the end of the world. But it is the end of the world if you're just ignoring it like an ostrich with his head in the sand. You have to create a plan and then be strategic about paying it down. The second thing I would suggest is, and business owners don't often like to hear this, is decide when you're going to shut your business down. Okay? I'll give you an example. If you start a web business and you say 6 months from now I want to have 2,000 paying users. Okay? If you have 1,900 paying users by 6 months, that's great. You did just fine. If you have 12, it may be time to shut it down. Okay? Mm-hmm. And remember, you'll have milestones along the way to know if you're on board or not. Too often what I find, particularly with small business owners, is we start something, we don't really know what we're going after, and then we spend 5 years doing something that the market doesn't care about. We may think it's great, but the market doesn't care. So I say it's important to objectively set down some milestones for yourself where you say, look, am I actually even close to what I would need to live on, the lifestyle that I want? If not, maybe it's time to try something else.
Right. That's such a hard thing to do in this economy when something else may not exist.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that's why.
I wasn't asking you a question. I know you can't fix that.
Yeah, but I think it's just important to understand, like, let's say that you want to start a company on sewing, right? So, all right, so you know your expertise is in sewing. I'm just making this up. But you may have said, I want to start a website teaching people how to sew using videos. Okay, so maybe there's no traction in that market. Maybe nobody cares about videos. So then you got to ask yourself, what do my customers want? Maybe they don't want sewing videos. Maybe they want a different type of information. Or maybe they want, a book or audio, or maybe they don't want anything online. Maybe they want something totally different. Just if you have an area of expertise, you have to just figure out what the market wants, not necessarily what you think is super important.
Mm-hmm. So are you seeing more people doing that, taking a business that they have, selling something in particular, where they have a specific, unique niche target market for the products that they sell, and then expanding to maybe teach people how to do that? So you have two things to sell. You have the product, and you also have the learning experience that you can share.
Well, that's what I do on my side as well. I'll give you an example how I do it. I started the blog. I didn't care about making money at all. In fact, I didn't run ads for 3 years. I lost tens of thousands of dollars, and that was okay to me because I was in it for the long term, and I still am. I never wanted to make it quickly.
Did you lose tens of thousands of dollars, or did you just not earn tens of thousands of dollars you could have earned?
Great distinction. I did not earn tens of thousands that I could have earned.
Okay.
What I found was that the blog was a great way to make secondary income, meaning not directly through ads, but rather speaking engagements or, in this case, a book deal, things like that. What I now find is that I've done a couple products, and what I found is because I spent a long time building up a community of people who really care and support each other, and they know that, you can trust this guy, Ramit. He's not out to try to scam us. that if I release a product, they will actually pay for it. And because they know it's super high quality and they know that they can trust it. So that took me years to build, but I was in it for the long term rather than any, quick dollar that I could have made.
And this is kind of what you were saying earlier about not being able to generate that kind of passive revenue until you optimize your active one. And that's the point in time where you had to buckle down and do all this work without actually having any income from it to speak of.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct.
Okay, wow. And I think I'm so glad that you're allowing me to emphasize that point, because there's so much out there that says that it's different. There's so much out there that says, you've seen it all, right? Don't you get it in your email all the time? Buy my new CD or my new book or whatever, and in 60 days or 90 days or whatever, you'll be making all this money, and oh, by the way, I'm sending you this email from my beach house in Antigua or something.
It's all BS. Look, it takes a lot of work to make that kind of money. And I know that it took, like I said, I've been doing this for 5 years. Yeah. And countless times I've just done something for free because it was faster and easier and I knew my users would love it, rather than trying to charge for, a trillion different kinds of products. Now that's just, that's a certain niche. It's my own audience and I spent a long time doing it. I think it's important to charge for value if you're doing something valuable, but at the same time, you can't go in with expectations that you're going to make $1 billion or even $1,000 a month in passive revenue, because who are you? Nobody really knows you or cares about you until you've shown that they can trust you. That's really important.
Establishing that first. Ramit, tell us where we can get in touch with you for more information.
My website is iwillteachyoutoberich.com, and the book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, you can find that at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or any bookstores. And are you on Twitter? I am on Twitter, twitter.com/Ramit. That's twitter.com/RAMIT. Excellent. All right, everybody out there, you know where to get in touch with Ramit. You can get information at his blog, iwillteachyoutoberich.com, get the book, and also check out some of his tweets, follow where he's going to be. I know he's doing a book tour now, lots of cities on this 15-city author tour that I see on the back of your book. Check it out and see if he's coming to a place near you. Ramit, thank you so much for joining us today on Indie Business Radio. Best of luck with everything that you're doing. I'm very excited for you. Thank you. This was a lot of fun. I'll see you guys next week for another great edition of Indie Business Radio. In the meantime, enjoy your life, build your business, and have your way.
You're listening to GlobalTalkRadio.com.